Now then, you're welcome along. Andy Dunne is here in studio. You're very welcome. Hello.
Thanks, Joe.
It's just you. You were thrilled you don't have to wear headphones. All you this evening.
Yeah, I must have a funny shaped earlobe, I think, because every time over the years I've sat here, they always pop out on that right side, which is a bit disconcerting. But
you and Kenny Cunningham are the worst shaped ears for headphones of any of the guests.
Well, I have a rugby excuse. I don't know what Kenny's is.
I don't know. Regardless, you're very welcome. So much to discuss. Are you in a broad kind of a way excited for the return of the normal rhythms of URC rugby this side of the world, or no?
No, I've got a bit of underlying URC kind of petulance over the years. Like whatever iteration that tournament has taken on over the years, and there have been many. Yeah. It's never been one that has excited me, to be honest. But allowing for that, if I can just say, looking at the games over the weekend, there were loads of interesting moments, and so I just got over myself a bit and said, well, let's just look at it, and take the rugby and look at that side of it. But yeah.
We'll come to your thoughts on the opening weekend in due course. So there have been mumblings about this for quite some time, and it's interesting that Jerry Thornley on the Irish Times has gone with the lead story in their sports section that Stuart Lancaster's move to Racing 92 at the end of this season, so it's not this season, at the end of this season, could be finalised by the end of this week. He writes that Leinster's senior coach is set to have a video meeting over the weekend with the Parisian club's benefactor, cum president Jackie Lorenzetti, and the current head coach, Laurent Travers. So they're going to have that meeting over the weekend. And French sources have told the Irish Times Lancaster's departure to Racing 92 now looks all but certain. All that remains is for Lancaster and the Racing hierarchy to agree on his exact role at the club. It goes on to talk about the various options there. But either way, he writes, Lancaster is in line to become Racing's new head coach or adopt a senior coach role akin to his existing remit with Leinster in time for the 2023-24 season. So I think the inevitable is nearing.
Yeah, well, now it's
been there since 2016.
Yeah, 7 years. He's I think made a huge impact. I think that's an obvious statement. When he joined, he's often told this, I think, compelling story about how difficult the come down and the fallout was from the 2015 World Cup with England. And he had spoken to the rugby league great Wayne Bennett, who has said, whatever job you go for next, make sure you're absolutely feeling that it's the right call in your gut, and make sure that the club who come looking for you really, really want you, and you're going to want that perfect match. And he was very honest and transparent about Leinster. He said that's exactly what happened. I think when he met probably Mick Dawson back then, some of the senior players, he got a sense that they really wanted him. He probably was in a place where he probably felt unwanted as a coach, and then his gut probably was saying, look, this is a really talented bunch of people that are not actually performing that well at that stage. When he came into Leinster, they'd had a pretty rough season, and he did turn it around with Leo. I think Leo always needs to be applauded for the fact as a head coach brought in someone with more experience, considered probably a senior in experience. And I think Leo always needs to be applauded for that. And that dynamic, the two of them were brilliant because no one fought for power openly there. There was no issue. Both of them just worked alongside each other. Very often coaching duos don't work. Julio and Roy Evans, I remember back in the Liverpool days, and they just don't tend to work all that much. But this one seemed to work seamlessly, and that speaks volumes for the lack of ego on both men. And I think that lack of ego that Lancaster has is a massive strength as opposed to any kind of a weakness. He's a brilliant leader. The way he's brought intensity to Leinster's game, humility to Leinster's game, consistency. I think ultimately, if he does go next week or whenever it's confirmed next year, but I think to be confirmed maybe next week, if he doesn't get something this year in terms of Europe, he'll probably leave with a hint of frustration, given that he could have had 3 or 4 with Leo, and currently they've only got 1. So But yeah, it's an interesting role. I wonder, does he feel the same now after 7 years? Racing is the right move now for him. They want him. Maybe he wants a change. So yeah, interesting. A week is a long time in sport, isn't it?
It sure is. And it's going to be a very significant summer for Leinster, and they've a year to get their heads around it. But in Mick Dawson, Lancaster and Sexton, you're losing a pretty important trio from various levels of the organisation. I mean, that's like we're starting over kind of territory. Yeah,
fair point. I mean, they've also, even from the coaching team, Contepomi's, Felipe's gone back down to Argentina, Leamy's gone back to Munster.
With all that insider info.
Yes, absolutely. I think nine players, and there's always turnover of players at the end of the year, but 9 kind of formerly frontline players in the last year or so would have left contractually, but that's probably a bit more normal in squad transitions year to year. But that it's definitely now an environment with a bit more unstable, and that's going to be a challenge. And they actually, at 21 points after 24 minutes against Zebre, I think a little bit of arrogance crept in. If they're not an arrogant group, but a little bit of, well, here we are again. It's the URC. It's a point a minute, and then they switched off, and Zebre actually were excellent. So I no doubt they'll get their arses kicked for that in videos and probably switch right back into gear. But interesting times for them, and not as stable and as they would like, I would say. Yeah. Don't know who's going to replace them then.
You should interview you, because I mean, you're in my head here. I was going to ask, in the world of football, when a vacancy like this comes up at a big team, it's so high profile across the board that instantly there would be 5 or 6 very well known names that all of us looking on would have an opinion on, linked with the job.
Sven Goran Eriksson.
Well, there was a
Leinster
time
job.
He was generally linked. Yeah,
generally linked with every job ever.
You think with rugby, and even you take Leinster, Joe Schmidt fairly under the radar. Cheika came in. You wouldn't have had the populace of Leinster saying we got to get Cheika in. So that landscape, I don't know who is the cutting edge coach that would jump to your mind, or do you even know?
Oh yeah, I'm there. No, I don't. I can't. Like, Leinster have always seemed to make brilliant decisions from relative obscurity, if we exclude Lancaster
and Matt O'Connor.
Matt O'Connor was, there was. They made wrong ones. I think people would admit Mark Ella. I'm sorry, not Mark Ella. Gary Ella was probably a mistake. I think Declan Kidney didn't fit. A bit like Benitez going to Everton, maybe. But
Cheika and Schmidt are inspired.
Cheika, Schmidt were inspired moves. I think O'Connor was a good move, but probably didn't work on the back of Schmidt. His style was too different, and players looked at him as too liberal, actually. But they've made some good calls over the years. I think I don't think there's an obvious successor out there, to be honest, that I can think of. So they may move left field again. They may get someone slightly under the radar from NPC or Australia. They may go homegrown. I can't think of any ready-made homegrown. I mean, Mikey Prendergast, I think, has great potential as a coach, but he's gone home to Munster. He to me, I just know him from his All Ireland League days. I was a coach in Old Bevo. He was young Munster, and we had some great battles. But he's technically and tactically excellent, and then has gone away and learnt in really challenging environments. I think he'll make a big impact in Munster, but I don't know if he's got the seniority yet to be considered as a head coach there, nor obviously in Leinster. But in terms of up and coming coaches, he's one to watch.
It's hard to know, and I guess the World Cup might complicate things slightly. There might be a lot of turnover. There will be a lot of turnover there. So,
well, I think it's fair to say he will. If he's going to leave a significant hole there in terms of what his influence is in the group.
Eddie Jones, can we get Eddie Jones in post World Cup? Shake things up. Worked the last time.
Eddie,
English head coach, post World Cup, in you come. Gregor Townsend, who knows? You see, as you said, there's humility required to do the Lancaster role under a Cullen, so it's quite a specific situation.
And I would have thought Leo will stay in situ as well, so you'll need someone to work with them.
Anything else from the Zebre Parma game that you want to mention or struck you before we move on to some other topics, given that we started on Leinster?
I suppose, no, there was just a little shift in mindset and concentration levels that dropped there. a little bit of excellence as well, kind of smatterings of excellence from Parma. I don't want to kind of take away from that. They were quite creative, nice, skillful, creative tries too, straight from set piece. So you got to hand it to them for that. Just a kind of a loose start from Leinster, but no, I think rather an insignificant game overall. Yeah.
So the Toyota Challenge is not quite capturing the imagination. I think.
How do I feel about that? If I've already vented about the URC, the Toyota Challenge is next.
Yeah. So this is Emerging Ireland, and Simon Easterby is going to be in charge. Andy Farrell is staying, as we know. Paul O'Connell, Mike Catt and John Fogarty will all travel. I'm sure people have seen the squad at this stage. It's been out for the last couple of weeks. But 4 players who are going have been capped at test level already. So Robert Balakoon, Caelan Blade, Max Deegan and Shane Daly. And then you also have Kieran Frawley, Joe McCarthy, Keane Prendergast, who played against the Maori All Blacks. And you have, I think, 8 players from the under-20s Grand Slam winning team of 19. So they're playing the Pumas, they're playing the Griquas, they're playing the Cheetahs. I don't think it'll be on Irish television. It's true, we just we talk about to Andy this evening, and it struck us that you've played on these Irish teams away from test level. So there are Ireland A Wolfhounds teams, names interchangeable, and then the Emerging Ireland is, I guess, third in line. Only created in 2013. It's a relatively new phenomenon, the Emerging Ireland team. Finished second, not that I need to remind you, at the Tbilisi Cup in 2013.
Obviously.
Yeah. Dan McFarland coached the Emerging Ireland team to victory at the 2014 Nations Cup, where, worth mentioning, Andrew Conway was a standout player. And Emerging Ireland won the 2015 Tbilisi Cup, but haven't played since. So if you're trying to think of Emerging Ireland, they haven't played in 7 years, so this is the first tour. You've played for Ireland A.
I've played many a Tbilisi and Toyota Cup kind of
type
thing.
Yeah.
Never got the real deal, but I got plenty of those ones.
Well, that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about, because I don't think I've ever done a piece in all the Monday and Wednesday Night Rugby's where I've talked to someone who was off Broadway playing these Ireland A type games.
Yeah.
So I've no sense of really what they're like. Is it all about winning, or is it just about each man for themselves? I'm on trial here, I need to play well and put my best foot forward, or the general atmosphere? How many of them have you played in?
Oh no, in reality probably 7, 8 times maybe. They weren't. They were just routine A fixtures the night before the Six Nations back in the day. They weren't Toyota Cups or Tbilisi Cups and so on. There was a Churchill Cup, I think, that was introduced at some stage in the summer tours. They are. They're just a mishmash of talent at different stages in careers. There's people who are put in to plug a gap, who's maybe got a bit of experience. There's a young pretender or two coming up that the senior team are genuinely looking at. There's probably a few combinations in terms of, 1 or 2 players are picked to play together specifically. So it's a real mishmash, and it tends to play out like that. One I think example maybe that springs to mind, it'd probably be around, I'm guessing 2008, hazy in my memory, but we lost 76-6 to Scotland.
You lost 67-7 to Scotland.
67-7, there we go.
I feel better.
Yeah, a little better. I think we probably went 6-0 up. It was one of those ones. But the following week, or whatever, 2 weeks later, we went to Welford Road and almost beat England. Roughly the same group of players. We had, I think, the England game. Now they made a few changes. The England starting backline against England was Chris Keane and myself, Shane Horgan at 12, Tommy Bowe at 13, Jordan Murphy at fullback, Luke Fitzgerald on the left wing, and possibly Keith Earls on the right wing.
Oh, that's strong.
So that was a strong A team.
Because the scoreline I have from that game against the Saxons doesn't suggest you nearly beat them. It was,
I think they got a late try or something, like a very late try, but it was close. It was a close game.
England
What was the
30.
score?
England 31, Ireland 13.
Well, maybe I've rose tinted glasses somewhat. It was better than 67-6.
Maybe you scored the first 2 tries and.
No, I think I don't. My memory of that was actually a reasonably good game.
Yeah.
Other memory was Chris Keane playing at 9. We were in school together for 6 years and never started a game of rugby together. It was the first game of rugby we started together was in Welford Road as a 9 and 10
Yeah.
Ireland Day against England Day.
And so, is it similar preparation to what the test team would be doing? You're together all week.
Yeah,
training
we were brought in, and you're brought in around Tuesday, Wednesday. You're staying in the hotel. You're doing multiple sessions, a bit of video. They try and certainly mimic what the senior team does, but it's clearly lacking in the same intensity and focus, I would say, because players are there on different agendas.
But I presume, the different agendas is key. So, look, the older players aren't going to be nervous, whereas the younger types, it's the biggest week of their life.
Yeah.
That's a weird atmosphere.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice atmosphere.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, I always thought it was a nice atmosphere, but...
more relaxed than you suspect.
Yeah, a little bit more relaxed, yeah.
The test
overall,
hotels. But not quite barbarians.
No, well... The night after we lost 67-6 to Scotland, Frankie Sheehan just suggested there's only one way we can deal with this, is drown our sorrows. And we'd one of the all-time great piss-ups, drowning our sorrows. Well, what can you do? 67-6 is absolute shame.
To Scotland.
Shame on us. And we could have gone home and stewed in the room. And Frankie was an elder statesman and said, come on, let's just get on it.
Yeah. And is the atmosphere like it's all about winning? Like the dressing room... pre-game, we've got to win this, or are the coaches even almost taking the attitude of, well, young Keith Earls, go out and do your best, this isn't the be-all and end-all, or that atmosphere in the build-up to a game, that can't feel quite like a cup final.
It's very diluted in reality, because whatever the coach says, everyone knows the result doesn't matter, honestly, I think. You're not particularly playing for a tournament, and a fella who plays well and loses in an Ireland Day game comes off the pitch delighted. I can tell you that much. There's no guy who plays well in an Ireland Day game, regardless of result, comes off gutted about it. Okay. So that's probably an insight.
Yeah. It's not a surprising one to hear, but
no.
Yeah, it is. It's that weird space. You're so close to.
So close, but so far.
The ultimate limelight,
Yes.
And
don't remind me.
Well, no. Listen, you've achieved more than 99.9% when it comes to sports. So I'll remind away. So and there's never fallout, as in the media on a Monday aren't saying, "Well, Ireland Day were bloody terrible." None of it just disappears into the ether. I feel.
I think it does. Probably rightly so. I don't think it merits that. It's really about game time for players, and you are thrown together, so it can be of use for the head coach of the senior team in maybe one or two scenarios each time it happens, and that's about it, I would say.
Well, I guess the Keith Earls example you mentioned in 2008, a year later he's in a Lions tour.
Yeah, it was pretty meteoric. Yeah.
Was that obvious when you...
Not in the 67-6 game, no.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Nobody walked off happy that night. Okay.
No.
So this 2022 version, which is emerging in Ireland, so it's another step back. It's like the third team created in 2013. The sense is that all the head coaches at provincial level are just disgusted with this whole thing, that they're losing players, and it's just a giant pain. What about the players going? How do you think they see this?
I'd say that the mood in each provincial camp is very would be palpable to the players. I'm sure there's frustration there from each provincial management, and I would have thought then the players who are going are a little quiet about it. I mean, they're going to do a job, but they're probably realising. I'll give you an example. I think, like, if you look at the front five who are going, they're not the next in line. They're the next in line for the next in line, probably for the next in line. They're probably third or fourth down. Keenan Knox, Jack Ainger are kind of next in line. They're not going on the tour.
Yeah.
So if it's an emerging or Ireland Day type tour, they should be going because they're next in line, but they're not going. And I would imagine the provincial coach has said, you are not taking these players off us because we're going to South Africa this week and we're not getting hammered in the scrum. So you can have X, Y and Z, but you can't have A and B. And so that puts question marks over the idea overall. If I'm being a real conspiracy theorist, what I actually think the entire thing is about is giving Kieran Frawley 3 games in a row at out half. I may well be proven wrong, but it looks to me like it's such a mishmash of players, again, at different levels. Yeah, Kieran Frawley's going.
Yes.
He is someone I believe they are really seriously looking at, and I think they're saying, go down to South Africa with a group of adults, kids, mixed abilities into a tough environment and manage it. That's what they're saying to him. And let's see how you get on. Because that is a difficult thing to do for anyone. And I think that this kind of executive decision making that Sexton has, that pervades the entire group and gives the group confidence, is something they are scared to lose through injury or through injury, and it's not going to be loss of form, but so they need they need an executive decision maker who can manage on the field, who can be demonstrative, who can be loud, vocal, give direction, give reassurance. And so send them down to South Africa with a motley crew and say manage it. And that's my conspiracy theory.
No, it's interesting. Well, look, in the
because there's too many guys there who aren't. There's not a chance they're going to feature in the World Cup.
No,
zero
I know.
chance.
The statement talked about this is crucial for the World Cup preparation.
Yeah, that's the PR and comms line. It's clearly not the truth.
Yeah.
So what else is going on? Why would Farrell and the team take on an additional? There's a lot of management to that. There's admin. There's risk of injury. There's risk of incurring the wrath of every provincial coach. Why do it? And I think they're actually looking at it and say we actually don't have a great backup plan for Johnny, and we need it, and he's not going to get a whole lot of game time in Leinster, and that's what I think.
And in the company of that,
and I like it.
Motley crew, do you? Yeah, as you described him, that Motley crew, he will be akin to Johnny Sexton's status in that company.
Yeah.
He will be.
Well, he'll have to. He'll literally have to talk the talk. But I like the idea because I think he's got something in him that he can actually do that next step. He's kind of come out of the shadows, I suppose. There's been Jack Carty 2019, there's been Carbery. Obviously Carbery's had such disruptions through injury, but he's also come in and done really well. A couple of clutch place kicking moments from. But I think Joey has fallen foul of the influence of really strong characters but very different views of the game. If you look at Larkham's views, they're going to be different to Schmidt's views. They're going to be different to Lancaster and Cullen's views. He's had all these really strong, opinionated characters talking to him about how to run and manage a game, and all of a sudden he's a little lost. I saw him play All-Ireland League rugby, admittedly at a lower level. He was just sensational. And he was his own player. He didn't look like Johnny Sexton. He didn't look like an imitation of anyone. In his first game for Leinster in the Heineken Cup, he played 10 against Montpellier and he beat 11 defenders in the first half. I covered that game for News Talk. He was phenomenal. Somewhere in that time, I think incorrectly, Leinster developed the idea that he wasn't a 10, started pushing him to fullback, and they thought he wasn't a 10 because he wasn't like Johnny enough. So he probably lost confidence. He probably started to change his natural game. Then he gets influenced by Larkham, God knows who else, strong characters. Now I watch him and he catches the ball, he runs sideways, he does this kind of passive distribution. That's not his game. He has improved his kicking game immensely. He's been unlucky with injury. I'm kind of not sure if I'm saying, right, he's definitely the number 2 anymore. When I look at Frawley, I see a different trajectory all of a sudden. I'm looking at a fella who looks really confident, really capable, and I think has a real outside chance of jumping the queue.
Yeah. And yet he's stuck playing 12 if he's lucky for Leinster.
It's interesting with Dai Young for Cardiff on the weekend. Liam Williams has obviously just first debut for Cardiff. Yeah. Such a super player, and I think dislocated the shoulder, out 4 months. Dai Young's interviewed afterwards, and he said he's already had a phone call from Wayne Pivac saying, will you put Josh Adams in fullback? And he's saying publicly, yes, I will. I'll help you and I'll put him in. So they're looking at the World Cup very clearly, and he's saying, as a coach of Cardiff, I'm going to change things around in order to help Wales. I'm not so sure you're going to see Frawley getting all the game time. The Irish lads would like a 10.
What's your sense of the relationship between Leinster HQ and the IRFU? Because they weren't happy with the Carbery situation. weren't
No,
happy to lose
no,
Carbery. And
they
I wonder
weren't.
if they're now thinking, well, hang on, we'll suit ourselves. And there's almost a degree of digging in on the Frawley
Yeah,
situation.
but they're combative people. Anyone who gets to that level is, no matter how nice they seem on the surface, they're spiky underneath, and they've long memories, all of them. So there's an element to that, but there's also the new element. So I know, like Schmidt, for example, was the Leinster coach, had a spiky relationship with the IRFU, went jumped over the wall, and was equally dismissive of Leinster as the Irish coach. And they said, you can't be serious. This guy can't be, doing this to us. He's been on the receiving end for 4 years, and now he's doing. But the Irish coach is the key job. You've also got, I think Farrell has seems to have quite a talent for impressing people, getting what he wants in a nice way, which again is vital in that role. But I definitely think the emerging tour has probably poked a few noses out of joint. Yeah, overall I'd say the provincial relationships with the IRFU is usually fractured at times, but I don't think ultimately it's problematic to the point of being causing barriers to progress for the Irish team. I don't know.
Yeah. It's quite frustrating and sad the way you talk about the trajectory of Carbery's career there, from that AIL player who was his own man. And
well, I don't want to do him a disservice. I think he has huge talent, and it's still within him. It's just, again, I had talent when I was young, and I had a lot of injuries too, and you do lose confidence and you do lose your way. And when you lose your way, you start listening to everyone's advice, and it's really the wrong thing to do.
Yes, because what you've described almost is too many voices in his ear and too many influences.
I mean, great voices with lots of experience, but there is a time when you get too much advice. And sometimes when I'm watching him play, I'm saying, where's Joey that I remember in terms of identity as a player? And his identity as a 10 is like Bowden Barrett, but he's not playing that style. He's not attacking the line. He's not a threat enough as a first receiver. And I go back to that Leinster debut against Montpellier, and he beat 11 attackers 1-1 in the first half.
Yeah,
he was unbelievable. Now that is a legitimate way to play rugby as a 10.
I was just going to say, do you think maybe in the upper echelons there was a conversation almost like,
yes,
this running by people, that's not going to cut it?
Yes, I do, and obviously I've got a bit of history in that, as I probably would have been viewed a player who didn't run the team well enough, and I would agree with that. But you can also have, like, Bowden Barrett played a way that was a threat as first receiver. Carter did it for years. Carter wasn't demonstrative when he played. He wasn't verbal. He wasn't an executive. He was just making really good calls, and he did it quietly. There's different styles of 10. In Ireland, at times, I think because Sexton is he's so talented, he's so influential, that if he's doing so well, we want everyone then to look like him. I think Carbery got lost a bit there.
And it's deeper than that, because if you think, and I've never had this thought before, but it's interesting the way you're talking there. If you think before Sexton there was O'Gara, what did we talk about with O'Gara? His game management.
Exactly.
So what was all the talk about Carbery when he came through? We would literally, there's probably tape of me saying it, things like, sure, he can beat 11 players, how's his game management?
Yeah.
And there's like this obsession with that aspect instead of almost
it's certainly I think it's an Irish thing and a Northern Hemisphere thing. If you look at New Zealand and Australia, who've fought 5 World Cups between them, they don't put the same emphasis around game management at 10. They definitely don't. South Africa do a bit, but New Zealand and Australia not so much in terms of those 3 World Cups. Stephen Donald played at out half for the team that won in 2011. So
how do we get onto this?
Don't know. Enjoying it.
Yeah, no, it's so
coffee, maybe.
Frawley.
Sorry,
yeah. So, well, a final thought on all that. Okay, so the emerging Ireland games, he plays 3 games. That's great. I'm still not all that comfortable with Frawley playing about 4 games at out half all season, 5 if we're lucky.
Well, maybe they're hoping he has a good run down there, and maybe it changes the mindset in Leinster, or they negotiate a way to get him more games. This is conjecture, obviously, on my part, but if they've designed that entire tour to give him more game time, I like it. I think it's a good idea. Yeah,
it's a lot of trouble to go to.
Well, it's legit. NFL teams build franchises around a quarterback.
Yeah,
make signings around it. They're like, make a tour to give the guy game time.
Can we call this the Kieran Frawley Toyota Cup?
Tour? Yeah. No pressure, Kieran.
One last question before we go. We've gone just over time. I know you watched the Munster game. You didn't see Connacht Ulster. We talked a lot about Connacht Ulster on Monday's show anyway. So the sense of Munster's performance was a real lethargy and very poor when it came to the contact area, and that's surprising when you would think there'd be great enthusiasm under new coaching Tickett. Very curious to see though if you saw signs of what they're trying to do.
No, I don't. I think it can be mistaken for lethargy. I think they have a very strong coaching group, and I think they'll have very strong guidance for that team. I think the shows Gary Neville does, what Soccer Box, where he interviews one player about his career and they're watching a video.
Yeah, they're great.
I loved it. He did one with Tony Adams, the great Arsenal captain, and he was talking about defence. Tony Adams said the best defence he played in Arsenal was the 4 worst players, but with him, Winterburn, Dixon and Bold. But he played with Viv Anderson when he started. He played with Sol Campbell towards the end, Ashley Cole on the left, Lauren, the African player of the year, on the right.
Yeah.
They were better players than Winterburn, Dixon, Bold and Adams, but those 4 knew how to defend. They were impenetrable because they spent time together on the field, and the nuances of defence is about understanding relationships over time, and you get a better defence. That Munster team looked like they'd never met, which they hadn't on a field defensively. So their 3 tries they leaked were god awful, really, really awful defensive errors that they will tidy up in about 3 weeks. And I think things will start motoring nicely for them then. I think there's no need to be alarmist. I think a lot of stuff gets looked at as lethargic or attitude wise, but no, Tony Adams, the analogy for me works in a lot of sport. It's a brilliant insight to how defences work. You don't need talent, you just need familiarity and consistency, and they're lacking that defensively, and I'd say that'll come with time. Okay,
we'll reconvene in a couple of weeks. Our rugby coverage on Off the Ball is with Vodafone, main sponsor of the Irish rugby team. We all belong to the team of us. Andy, thank you very much. It's been great to cover everything from the 2008 67-7 defeat at the hands of Scotland for Ireland Day, right through to
great memory.
The Arsenal back 4. So we've done it all. Thanks so much. Good to see you again.
You too. Thanks, Joe.